Bizarre story from Toledo here. It's a rainy day in Northwest Ohio, and I'm here to cover the story of Cynthia Anderson, who at age 20 in 1981 went to work and simply vanished. So Cynthia Anderson was born on February 4th, 1961 to her parents, Michael and Margaret. She was one of four children, and she was the child of Christian fundamentalists whose lives basically were built on self-discipline and hard work and their unwavering faith in God. Um, she was known to be quiet, very dependable, and very obedient, as her father put it. The children were somewhat sheltered. They lived a sheltered life. Their dad didn't want them to really see the outside elements of the world, and their entire childhood and pretty much even into adulthood consisted of just church type activities and functions and things like that. That's really all they did was hang out with church folks and do church things. Now, fast forward to 1981, Cindy's 20 years old and she's working as a legal secretary for the law firm of Neller and Rabbit here in Toledo, Ohio. And she usually worked mornings because the attorneys were at meetings or in court, things like that. So she would typically work mornings, and she only had about 10 days left before she was going to quit and attend Bible college with her boyfriend, Jeff Lemke. Now, about a year before her disappearance, she had been having nightmares where there was a knock at the door and she would let somebody in. It's somebody that she knew. And once she let them in, they would basically betray her, they would chase her, and eventually murder her. This had been going on, and it was basically traumatizing her every day. This was happening almost nightly for about a year leading up to her disappearance. So she wasn't fond of being left here at this firm alone. She didn't really care for it. So the attorney who owned the law firm put in some type of buzzer to where if there was trouble, she could ring this buzzer and it would alert the neighboring business. Now, in April of 1981, Cindy was at work and she looked up and saw on an adjacent building where somebody had spray painted "I love you, Cindy" on the side of the building. And that kind of freaked her out because she had been having these dreams and these nightmares, which her family actually believes ended up being maybe like premonitions. But she sees this "I love Cindy" and it kind of freaks her out. She thinks it's for her. So that gets painted over almost immediately. And then within a couple weeks, it's back up again. She arrives to work, goes to enter the office, and sees "I love you, Cindy" again. Now, it's been said later on that they found that this did not pertain to the Cindy that we're talking about. I have not verified that, but it said that this message was for another Cindy who worked somewhere nearby here, but it was not meant for this particular Cindy. So I'm not 100% sure on that, but there's been some speculation. But on the morning of August 4th, 1981, she leaves her home in Lambertville, Michigan, which is about 15 minutes away, at 8:30 in the morning so she can get here and open up and be ready for business by 9 a.m. Now, we know Cindy was answering the calls here at the firm up until about 9:45. And then around 10 o'clock, the phones went unanswered. So whatever happened to Cindy happened between 9:45 and 10 o'clock a.m. And it happened right here in this strip. She simply disappeared. Now, her attorneys arrive just a little after noon, And they see that the radio was on, the air conditioning was on, she had prepared their desks. Everything looked normal. Cindy's car, her 1980 Chevrolet, was parked out front. The only thing missing was her purse and her keys. And her. They also noted that it smelled like nail polish in the office. Now, the law firm, I do know, is in one of these suites right here. I'm not exactly sure which one. There was no I could not find an address after many, many days of looking. I could not find an address at all. But one of the locals that I talked to who had lived here back in the 80s said it was the suite on the far left. But I believe these two restaurants were added on after this happened. So I believe it's going to be that H&R Block office. Now, we do know that Cindy's desk was in front of a window and it faced an area where she could see that spray painted message. It's also at this time that she starts to receive harassing phone calls, even with the customer witnessing these harassing phone calls. However, she never told anybody what they were about. So this right here would be the strip mall where she disappeared from. And it would have been this N1 down here. Right here. 1981. Between 9:45 and 10 o'clock a.m., Cindy Anderson was never seen again. So there's a few different theories as to what happened. One of them being that there was 4 young people killed within the same month that Cindy disappeared that all worked for the same grocery store chain. And one of those stores happened to be in the same plaza as where Cindy's law office was. So that's one theory, but they don't think that's really related to her disappearance. Another one, too, is they think Cindy was maybe kind of tired of her upbringing and tired of kind of being sheltered and living the life that she did. And they think maybe she found a new boyfriend and possibly ran off with him to live her life on her terms and the way she wanted to, because she was pretty sheltered. All the kids were pretty sheltered. And maybe it's possible that Cindy just was done with that life and wanted to go do her own thing. Another theory, and this is the one that most people think is the most logical one, is the one attorney she worked for, Richard Neller, was found guilty in a drug trafficking ring. And they believe Cindy may have overheard a conversation that Neller and a drug dealer named Jose Rodriguez Jr. had about their drug operation. And apparently, according to law enforcement, Jose allegedly admitted to a cellmate, Scott Hansen, in prison that he murdered Cindy with a handgun in the law office. And he said that that was at the order of Richard Neller, which was Cindy's boss, one of the attorneys. Cindy's dad said that Cindy was such a good person and she was so honest that she would have alerted the authorities to this drug ring. So that's one of the theories. It was also a very, very violent time in the city. There was a lot of murders going on. And then there were serial killers, Anthony and Nathaniel Cook, who went on a murder spree from 1973 to, I think it was 1981, which would have been the same year that Cindy disappeared. And they thought maybe that they were involved at some point, but later turns out that the police ruled them out. Now, leading up to her disappearance, she had been putting more effort into her appearance. According to her father, she had been really doing her makeup and doing her hair. And according to her father, she had kind of became a debutante, just putting a lot more effort into her appearance. Then in 1981, a month after Cindy's disappearance, a woman calls the police and tells them that Cindy is being held in the basement of a white house somewhere in the city. She goes on to say that there's two white houses that are side by side, and they're owned by the same family, but the family is out of town, and it's their son that's holding her captive in the basement. So the detectives tried to press this woman on the phone for more information, but she was already in a panic, and she was whispering, and she hung up and never called back. And they never did identify that woman. And that turned up to be a kind of a dead lead. They tried to investigate. They went out looking for, houses in the area where there was two side-by-side white houses, and they just couldn't come up with anything. Now, Cindy's mom, Margaret, she passed away from cancer in 1983, sadly. Her dad, Mike, he passed away in 2008. Now, when he passed away, he still lived in the same house, and he even had the same landline telephone with the same telephone number as he had back when Cindy disappeared, because in his mind, Cindy was going to come back one day. He was determined that she was going to come back and say, "Hey, Dad, I had a case of dementia, but I remember things now." As far-fetched as that may be, I guess when your child is missing, you kind of hold on to any type of hope that they'll return. And right now I'm looking for the grave of her parents, Margaret and Mike. I know they're in here somewhere, just don't know exactly where, but we'll find them. So it's been 44 years and no sign of Cindy. So after about 30 minutes of walking this entire section here, which is a pretty large section, this is a huge cemetery, but it wasn't clear exactly where they were in this section. So I actually started at that side and just walked up and down, and finally got here to the second to last row, and I found him. Her mother, Margaret, who passed away in 83 from cancer, and then her dad, Mike, who passed away in 2008. And Mike always held on to the hope that she would someday come home. Now, years back, he could have had her legally declared dead, which would have freed up several $1,000s from her college fund. But he never did that, because he said that if he were to do that, it would be over. It would seem like it's over. And he never wanted it to be over, and he never felt like it was over. So actually at the house, there was a swing set in their backyard that all the siblings had as children. When he passed away, that same swing set was still there, very dilapidated and decayed from the northwest elements, and very overgrown, but it was still there. He never got rid of it. So this poor guy went to his grave never knowing what happened to his daughter after all those years. They both did. So rest in peace, Mr. and Mrs. Anderson. Hopefully something comes of this at some point. It's been 40 plus years, so hopefully there's closure to this case at some point soon here. If you've heard of this case or have any information, please comment below. Thanks for watching.